You walked into a room and felt something strange. Nobody said anything different, but the energy shifted completely. You felt it, but you could not explain it. Maybe you went home that night wondering what exactly had happened. This video is not about obvious conflicts, not about being difficult or toxic. It is about something far more subtle, something much rarer, something almost no psychologist manages to explain in a way that actually makes sense to hear. If you are not subscribed yet, do that right now. Every week there is content here that most people will never see. Before anything else, I need to break a belief you are probably carrying with you as you watch this video right now. It is not your appearance. It is not your personality. And it does not mean you are a toxic person in any way. Emotionally stable, reserved, or highly self-aware people create effects around them that they themselves never notice. Not out of malice, not out of arrogance, simply because their presence reconfigures the environment around them. And reconfigured environments become uncomfortable. You might be exactly that kind of person and have never known it. Picture a work meeting where everyone starts drifting in the same direction. The group energy pulls hard at all of them. Most people follow, and you do not. Not because you are being difficult, but because you process before you react. When people realize they cannot move you, that creates a specific kind of discomfort with a clear psychological root. Most human interaction is an exchange of influence. When you do not respond to that exchange, the other person feels it. You thought you were being thoughtful. They felt like they were hitting a wall. And honestly, neither of you was wrong. When you listen far more than you speak, people project onto you. They fill your silence with their own assumptions, with fears, with judgments you never made. And then you ask yourself, how could any of this possibly be my fault? It is not fault. It is dynamics. Silence creates space. And space makes people invent stories about who you are, especially in groups where constant talking works as proof of comfort. Without that signal, they do not know what to do. Have you been called cold, distant, like you do not seem to care? This next sign explains exactly where that comes from. Social interactions run in real time, an emotional choreography. Someone reacts, and the other responds right away. When you process internally before responding, you break that rhythm, and the other person reads it as rejection. Psychologists call this emotional regulation asynchrony. Simply put, you regulate your emotions on a different timeline. That is sophistication, but it reads as coldness. You were just thinking. They felt like you were pulling away. You have a trained eye for when what people say does not align with what they actually do when it matters in practice. When the smile does not reach the eyes. When the story shifts from one encounter to the next. You always notice. You never comment. You do nothing with it. But people feel that you notice, and that destabilizes them deeply. Being truly seen is terrifying for someone who builds different versions of themselves for every audience they face. Near you, that strategy does not hold. The discomfort that rises is not about you at all. It is about themselves. There is a social currency flowing through every group. Compliments, validation, strategic agreements at the right time. Everyone trades that currency constantly, and you are simply not in that market. Not because you are arrogant, but because you already have an internal reference. You do not need someone else to confirm what you already know. When you do not seek approval, people lose a key tool of influence over you that bothers them in ways they cannot name. And losing that tool is, for the social human brain, a low-level ongoing threat. So they stay guarded around you. You follow through. You do not get lost in unnecessary drama. You seem more organized than average. That bothers people. And it bothers them in a way they rarely can articulate. If this is making sense to you, go ahead and leave a like. Psychology calls this self-regulation contrast. You enter a group and inadvertently mirror their disorganization back. Not intentionally, just by contrast. And nobody likes seeing their own chaos reflected in someone standing right there. So they attack the mirror. They call you rigid, a perfectionist. You were only ever trying to live with some peace. The last sign is perhaps the most misread of all. You feel comfortable with yourself. You recharge in silence. You do not need constant social stimulation to feel okay. For those who depend on validation, that reads as rejection, not because you rejected them, but because you do not need them the same way they need each other to feel whole. That creates an invisible emotional hierarchy where you appear more independent and more complete than the others. You are tired of being misread. You just want peace. You do not like drama. You feel like you have to explain yourself, not because people are bad, but because you operate on a register that demands more energy than most interactions allow. Maybe the problem was never your presence. Maybe some people just feel uncomfortable around someone who does not need the same level of validation they do. It is not your responsibility to shrink yourself so that others can feel bigger. It is not your job to react faster, speak louder, or pretend you need approval that you genuinely do not need at all. What you can do is build awareness of these effects, not to change who you are. That is not what this is about, but to understand what happens around you and choose, with greater clarity, where you want to be and with whom. Which of these signs described something you could never explain about yourself? Leave it in the comments below. The comments here become the next videos. And the video on screen right now continues exactly this same conversation.